Take their seats. We're already running a few minutes behind. I apologize, but we will get this meeting started. If there's an issue that you want to speak on today, we have orange cards up front that you can fill out and put the item number and indicate whether you want to speak or you just want to be recognized as for or against a particular item. We'd like to start the meeting with a call to order and roll call, please.
Yes, sir. As soon as I find my sheet. Dr. Beebe.
Here.
Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi.
Here.
Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Ms. Bradford is present. Mr. Garvey.
He's here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio.
Present.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Hill.
Here.
Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Dr. Moranti.
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange Jones.
Present.
Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Romer.
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Ashley McReynolds of La Teach to come forward and lead us in the prayer for the day, and James Machen to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone please stand. Thank you. If that was on.
Heavenly Father, we pray that you will give us your gift of knowledge, that we might always make the best decisions for the good of all the school children in Louisiana. We pray that you give us the wisdom to know and define our tasks, the strength to build and refine our educational goals, and the courage to persevere as necessary. We ask for your direction that we might make unselfish decisions for those we serve. We pray that all who are assembled here have a safe journey home. We thank you for all your past and future blessings. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, members. And before we approve the agenda, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all the members and all the audience participants for last night. We had a lengthy night, but I thought a night with a lot of good discussion. We also appreciate our own staff. We know it was a long, hard day for you, and y'all went, after we left and went home, y'all were still working, so we do appreciate that very much. I'd like to start off with the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion in this. There's a second. Any objection? Hearing none, we'll move to, I guess you can. Go ahead. You go. I'm stepping on you. Go ahead. I apologize.
The next item is item 3, approval of the minutes of August 14th, 2013.
I so move.
Motion by Mr. Gio, second by Mr. Lee. Any objection or correction in the minutes from August 14th, 2013? Hearing none, so moved. I'd like to ask now for our state superintendent to give his report. Thank you.
Members, thank you very much. I wanted to build on some of the discussion that we had yesterday, just to bring you up to speed on what I will call transition policy, connected with both our new standards as well as our state's attempt to renew its focus on career education. We talked at length yesterday about the discussions that the state has had with the Accountability Commission, as well as with the Superintendent's Advisory Council, as well as with educators and families across the state, regarding the transition in areas like standards, assessment, and accountability. And as you know, in December and January, you will be reviewing policy on those issues that are now out for public comment. We're taking feedback on them, and we will be bringing policy proposals in those months. At the same time, members, as you know, we have been discussing not just what I'll call the fundamental skills part of the education system, but also we've been discussing with parents, educators, policymakers across the state the technical side of our education system. And after many meetings over the last 6 months, I think it's very evident to all of us who have participated that right now we are not heeding, as a country and as a state, enough attention to the technical education side of our role. As was mentioned yesterday, we have 86,000 jobs coming to our state over the next 5 to 10 years. Those jobs are, for the most part, technical jobs that do not require a full 4-year college education, but all of which require a sophisticated education after high school. Our system, as it currently stands, has not oriented itself toward that population of young adults. And in spite of the fact that we are only graduating 19% of kids from our 4-year universities, we, in our current system, are not really promoting that niche of education wherein the student is prepared directly for a career through a technical education. It's not a dropout circumstance. It's not just a high school diploma circumstance. It's one for a kid with an advanced education, but not a full 4-year degree. It's a path to the middle class. It's a path to prosperity, and it needs to be provided. We are working with legislative leadership, including Representative Fannin, the author of the Career Diploma Bill, on policy that would support this. We're also working with 5 what we're calling Jumpstart Consortia across the state, and I thank Ms. Bradford for attending our meeting of the Jumpstart Consortia in Acadia Parish in Crowley 2 weeks ago. That, I think, was a real demonstration of the desire of our technical college system, of our business community, and of our school boards to build and redevelop a viable system of technical education, but one that builds on the strengths of all sectors to prepare kids directly for a career. I think there is a general awareness that if we don't do that, in spite of our best efforts to build fundamental literacy and math skills, we will miss on the opportunity to open those jobs to Louisianans, and instead will allow prosperity for a whole set of other people, but not for the generation of people who can take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime generational opportunity and economic growth in our state. So I wanted to provide you that context that as much as we've been focusing on the transition policies associated with fundamental academic skills, we need to keep our eye on the ball of technical skills to ensure that kids at all levels of performance have those opportunities availed of them. We're going to continue to focus on this, working with Representative Fannin, working with others, working with our school systems, and I'm thrilled that the School Board Association and the Superintendent Association are represented here, and they're involved in these discussions as well. And ultimately, we'll be bringing you a set of policies that attempt to honor and stimulate technical education so that we can close this employment gap, make opportunities available for young adults, and prosper as a state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any board members have a comment regarding that report? If not, we'll move to the next item.
The next item is item 5, board and committee reports. The first committee to be considered is behind tab 5.1, and that's Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee. Ms. Bradford?
On behalf of the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee, I move to approve motions 2 through 15, noting that motions 13 and 14 are notices of intent, and pulling motion 1 as a read. Mr. President, I would also like to add a couple of other items for us to consider.
Under one of those?
Yes.
Under those pulls?
Yes.
Okay, so say again, you want to, if you don't mind restating your motion one time.
I move that we approve the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee and approve motions 2 through 15, noting that motions 13 and 14 are notices of intent, and pulling motion 1 as a read.
And is it within item 1 that you have additional information? Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? There's a second by Ms. Dr. Moranti. Any objection to that motion? Hearing none, proceed.
We had a lot of good discussion yesterday, and there were some items that came out that warranted attention. And so I'd like to move that we approve as a declaration of emergency effective from 10/16/13 to 2/12/14, or until it is finally adopted as a rule. Revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, content standards, planning and instruction, maintenance and use of system records and reports, and approve as a notice of intent the revisions to 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, covering the same subjects.
And I appreciate that. So that was a motion to?
Yes.
Is there a second for that motion? There's a second by Dr. Moranti. Discussion on that motion.
I have a question.
Ms. Hill?
Well, I guess my concern would be, what is the rush in reference to declaring it as an emergency and being effective immediately, instead of going through the proper procedure and the proper protocol?
I think Ms. Cope has some clarity as well.
Ms. Hill, just to
Point
be
of
clear,
order.
it's doing both. It's doing an emergency rule, so it would take effect immediately, but then also a standard notice of intent that would run through the full process. Emergency rules are only valid for up to 120 days, which would allow for the regular notice of intent process to
Okay, I
occur. So
understand
it's
that.
both.
I guess my concern is, what is the rush? I mean, what is the emergency?
President?
Yes, Ms. Bradford.
I think that what this does is it really directs our LEA about materials that they can use and the fact that they can just select their own. It gives our parents opportunity to see the materials, to opt out, to put more input from the parents, and it also really directs the LEAs to be responsible for what's going on in their district. And also then in the maintenance records, that, we had a lot of conversation about that yesterday. And this kind of clarifies and puts some more teeth to what we do at a state level as far as student data. And I felt like this would give us an opportunity to give some cover and continuity, while at the same time beefing it up till we could make it a rule of order. But I just feel like we need to say that we heard our constituents and we heard what they were saying, and that we're responding in this way.
Well, could you give us a few minutes to read what you've just presented? I know you've given us an overview.
Sure. Well, why don't we take one moment and.
I would love for us to have a quiet time.
Take a
Is
moment.
that possible?
And we'll while you take a moment to read, I'll make two quick points. One, I want to have Ms. Cope reiterate what she just said regarding.
Excuse me, Mr. Roman. I'm one of those students. I need, if I'm reading, if you're going to distract me if you're making comments, because I'm interested in what you have to say, and I'm also interested in the text.
Oh, I didn't think you listened to me, so that's okay. I'm joking. Please, I'll be quiet for a second.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Lee. Speak softly.
I'd like to consider making what I consider to be a friendly adjustment to this. Is this a recommend? This is a motion?
If that is a motion, and then the language.
Okay.
Yes.
Then an amendment to the motion.
Mr. President?
Under item 1, the next, the last line under item 1, where it says including the technology requirements of school systems and I'd like to see eliminated implications of halting. That would just read requirements of the school systems and the transition to Common Core standards. It's already been approved. So it's just a transition. What we're doing is moving forward with the transition. I don't see that it needs
Mr. President,
to.
I failed to read. We pulled number 1, and thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Lee. I failed to read that we are considering that right now. So I just want to go on the record of saying that to receive the report regarding the implementation of the Common Core state standards and accompanying park assessments in Louisiana, including the technology requirements of school systems and the implications of halting the transition to Common Core standards. Now, Mr. Lee.
I just don't see the need to recognize the possibility of halting the implementation.
I tend to agree.
I
If you would,
accept that amendment.
okay, so that would change the amendment, striking out and the implications of halting the,
It would just read school systems and the transition to Common Core. Remove the words implications of hiring the.
okay, so that's an amendment. It does require a second. And there's a second by Dr. Moranti.
I'd like to have clarification.
Yes.
Why are we addressing this again? This was, huh?
Please, if you'd speak into your mic and.
No, I mean, it was on the board agenda. Why is there a need to address it again? Didn't we address that yesterday? We
think-
approved the motion to receive.
I do. I think what, and maybe the superintendent, rather than the presiding officer, can talk to his intent or the maker of the motion. It would be more proper, but I'm glad to provide some articulation, which is, given concerns that were raised yesterday, this would be a temporary clarification to districts on issues that we think they need to make sure they understand. Now, it ultimately has to go through the normal process to become permanent policy. But based in the confusion of yesterday, although the conversation was good, we want to make sure parents are reassured that these items we in fact have listened to and have taken steps to reassure that districts are clear in what they can and cannot do. So that's the intent here.
But it was done.
Can I suggest?
It was done. I don't know the reason to duplicate effort. I mean, we've done it, so why do we revisit it?
I think we may be confusing different pieces of policy, and if I could just speak to it.
Go ahead.
One, Ms. Bradford's motion, the first one, is to receive the report that Dr. Beebe requested and that was on the agenda and was delivered yesterday. I believe, Mr. Lee, that her first motion simply mirrors the language that Dr. Beebe included in her original executive recommendation. So, in a sense, whether or not one agrees with the language on halting the transition, and as you know, I don't, it still was the language that was used in the original exec rec. Items 2 and 3 are then Ms. Bradford's motion to adopt policy, both emergency policy and policy on notice of intent, in reaction to the testimony heard on Dr. Beebe's report yesterday. So I guess I would urge that the board respect the fact that the language that that was included in Dr. Beebe's recommendation, that just is what it is. I don't believe Ms. Bradford is endorsing that language in its content. She's just saying this is the title of the report that was delivered. On the other hand, Ms. Bradford is recommending that in response to the testimony heard on that report, the board adopt a set of policies that give school systems guidance in the next 4 months and then beyond that. Does that help?
It does help. It helps me. I don't know if it helps others.
So we're not actually being, as I understand your clarification, we're not asked to receive the report. It's not the motion to receive.
I believe that is one of the motions that Ms. Bradford is making, and that's why the language is exactly the same as the language that was in the exec rec yesterday.
I think because the item was pulled, because the item was pulled, she had to read the motion.
That's exactly what I
I
was
apologize.
saying.
I confused
Yes,
that.
yes.
Item 1 listed on your page was because she pulled that item in order to do items 2 and 3, and therefore she had to read item 1. So I apologize, Ms. Beebe.
No problem. I just wanted some understanding because it's been done.
Sure. So, is it, and I apologize, I've muddied this up significantly. Would we go back to the original language on item 1? Would we want to restate the motion? I know, Mr. Lee, or do you want to stay with your amended motion?
No, I'm not. All I was doing was trying to simplify and remove any negative connotation.
And I'll leave that to the board. Okay.
Judy did.
All right. So we do have a motion and we do have a second. Do we have a motion on items 2 and 3, or is that just a motion on all
I would
parts?
like
Okay.
to speak to that if I may, but
Yes,
see,
ma'am.
we're doing several things at one time.
Yeah.
Dr.
So-
Beebe.
So I have some comments about the meeting yesterday, and I do applaud those individuals who came and gave of their time. I know some took time off work, and whether they agreed or disagreed, they did it in a professional manner. And I think it was certainly a venue. That was my purpose for putting it on the agenda, because of the outreach. And I believe when you suppress people's opinions, then it will result in chaos down the road, or even immediate. The concern I have, and you know, I kind of felt like we had all of these discussions, and again, a great discussions, and many of them centered, and I'll pick one of great concern, and that is with the implementation. And as I hear the request to proceed in an emergency, in an emergency fashion, that, you know, it's critical that we proceed hastily, then I don't know that we fully absorbed the context of what was presented, and that there is an implementation issue. So my point today was to appeal to you as a board to adopt a resolution to forward to the legislature, asking for them to delay the accountability piece until we perfect the implementation. And, you know, I am a district superintendent. I heard, and those wonderful educators who were here yesterday talking about their experiences. I am now convinced. I had on my drive here, I talked with several of my staff members back home, and we have different levels of experience, different levels of support from the State Department. One young lady indicated that in St. Bernard Parish, a district I represent, she is a member of a state committee. 3 years ago, she was involved in communications with the state. She had the information presented to her to move forward to help her district. And yes, she is assisting because of our recognition that we need assistance in the district. There was an outreach to St. Bernard Parish because it ranks within the top 10 districts in the state. So again, there are systems, for whatever reason, they're not at the same place. And I understand Superintendent White said yesterday that we have all been given support, and I've heard testimonies from teachers indicating that it's the teacher's responsibility to make things happen, and I do acknowledge to an extent that is the case, but they also need guidance. Again, I will reiterate, teachers come with different skill sets. Mr. Lee, you have been a superintendent. You know what I am saying is factual. I am not against reform. I want our schools to be successful. I want our students to be successful. But we need the time, the guidance, the expertise to get it right. And I will say, Superintendent White, and I don't care if I offend anyone on your network team. My meetings with my network team, and I get so frustrated, and my supervisors also share the frustration. When they come to the table, they ask, what can we do to help you? Well, you're the experts. You're supposed to be giving us guidance as to how you can help us, Mr. White. May I have your attention, please?
Mr. Chairman.
Now, I will say that there are those within the network team, those who, there are two young ladies, I give them stars, because they're doing their jobs effectively, assisting with the request I made of them. But we have to listen to the stakeholders in the field. Now, some of you, I don't know, the last time you visited a school, it might have been yesterday, but I'm saying, not one day, not to go on a parade and say, well, we visited schools, we want input, Miss Teacher, how are you doing? They're not going. Teachers are respectful. They're in many, and I'm making a generalization here, they're submissive. But the reality is we have many teachers, and some within my district, We need additional support. I became superintendent in August, July 1st. And we need time. We don't have the teacher coaches like some districts do. And this is not whining, it's that we're not on an equitable playing field. We have different districts with different economic or financial means.
May I recognize other members, and then if Dr. Beebe, if would like to speak again.
I have a technical clarification.
Okay, we'll do that, then I'll go to Mr. Lee, Dr. Moranti, and Mr. Jones.
On an original motion, we cannot change the language, so we can't amend that for me to be able to do the next two.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Mr. Lee.
I don't disagree with what Dr. Beebe just said. I think some teachers are better prepared for Common Core implementation than others are. And that's really what I'm hearing her saying, that there needs to be more in service. And I was going to make a motion at the end of this committee report that I think maybe will help address this.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
So I'll recognize you at the end of, before we can move to the next item. Dr. Moranti.
In all respect to Dr. Beebe, we listened very carefully yesterday. And I heard the concern, but I also heard the catch-up that has to occur because they honestly and truthfully said they didn't start implementation because they just thought Common Core was going to go away. I heard a lot of excuses yesterday, and I heard some reasons. But I don't think that, as leaders of this state, that we can accept the mediocrity. We are 47th, do we want to be 50th? I think that if this board doesn't take the step to begin saying and doing what we did 3 years ago, I do believe we have implementation problems. There's no doubt about that. I do see superintendents like Dr. Beebe really doing everything she can in her district, in her area, to get her teachers prepared. I heard the passion. I also heard a lot of things yesterday from teachers who are already implementing the core, and yes, I have been in the classrooms. I have seen the core implemented. I've seen the excitement on the part of our educators. I've seen, more importantly, the excitement on the part of our students, especially at-risk students. And I do believe that we're sending a very, very strong message to our state that we are not going to step back, that we will go with full implementation, and we're going to see just exactly in 5 years when we can say and look back, I'm glad we did rather than I wish we had. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Orange-Jones.
I'll hold. I think it's been,
Okay.
I like with Dr. Moran.
Mr. Garvey.
Yes. I'd like to thank the department for taking the action on these items. And I'd like to highlight what I see as 4 separate parts to what we're doing here. And I'd like to do that because the legislators from St. Tammany Parish have asked us to take some action on these items, and I'd like to acknowledge that this is a first step to customizing the Common Core to Louisiana and allowing the districts to customize the Common Core to their district and to the families that can be unique in one part of the state and different from the other parts of the state, and so need to have a customized approach to how they implement the Common Core. I think the first part, where we're clearly stating that, and I think that this applies to what I describe as the Ivy League bound students, we're clearly stating that districts can go above and beyond these minimum standards, and I appreciate that. The second part is clarifying that the department, that the state, and to those who are worried about the feds getting involved, are not requiring the districts to use any particular reading materials, any particular texts, any particular curriculum, and that we are allowing the local districts to customize this effort to what they think their parents and their children need the most. The third part is really two parts, 3A and 3B, and that involves what has been referred to as controversial texts being used in the classroom. I think it's good that in 2303 we are clearly stating that parents should have the ability to review what their children are going to be reading, and the part B is that the parents should have the ability to exempt their children, opt out from any controversial reading material that is planned for their children. And the final part, and again, I'd like to emphasize that this is a step, one step in customizing and fitting the Common Core into Louisiana. And that concerns the data storage. I think we have taken some steps today to further ensure the privacy of our children and protecting their data. And if I understand it right, we're going to be taking more steps in the December time frame to do an even better job. So on behalf of the St. Tammany legislators, I'd like to thank the department for making these steps.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey. We do have a comment card.
Excuse me, Mr. Roman.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Hill.
I had a comment. I strongly believe on yesterday, I listened to both sides, and I strongly believe that we all can agree with the Common Core standards. We all can agree that we need more rigorous standards. But what's challenging for me is that when I listen to the parents, and we always talk about parental choice, giving choice to parents. As I listen to the constituents in my district, the educated constituents in my district, financially stable constituents in my district, they are having challenges helping their children with homework. But my major concern is those kids that don't come from a background such as a family that is educated or have a financial stability and that's trying to survive and not have the assistance or the resources to be successful. And so for me, it's the accountability, because I don't want to put teachers in a position where we hold them accountable for a process that we haven't even got together as a board or even as a department. And to hold districts and schools and educators who work so hard. I'm not an educator, but I can tell you, I'm always in the schools, and I appreciate what they do. It's a gift. I know I could not teach. It is truly a gift. I was in the classroom for 3 weeks. I said, oh, no, I can't do this. But it's a gift to be able to educate children. And so for me, I would like for us to look at something in reference to the accountability, send something to our legislators, and maybe what Ms. Beebe suggested in reference to the accountability piece. At least give the teachers the opportunity to get it right and to let the state be able to get it right before we hold them accountable. Because the issue at hand is that if these kids don't perform, 50% of their evaluation is based on the students' performance and theirs as well. And so that's my concern.
I appreciate that.
And I'm glad that you guys addressed the technology piece, because there was another issue, but it's addressed in...
I think you make some good points, Ms. Hill, and I think Mr. Lee has indicated that he's going to address those to some extent. I think there's work still coming because your points are well made. Ms. Bophy, and then I'd like to handle the comment card and see if we can move on this item.
You can take the comment card first.
Mr. Scott Richard, Louisiana School Board Association.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on this item. A couple of concerns from a procedural standpoint. From past experience as an elected official, normally when an agenda is modified, there are some procedures that need to take place as far as a unanimous vote. And I think you all have some procedures in place that address a 24-hour notice requirement to add such an item to your agenda. While I appreciate the flexibility that's proposed in this basically new agenda item, there are some fundamental concerns in regards to the flex waiver, USDOE approved flex waiver that is in existence for local school districts and the state of Louisiana to comply with in regards to instruction and curriculum as we transition to Common Core. It's clearly stated in the flex waiver that the Department of Education will provide a transition plan with transition support and a curriculum to assist local school districts. It's plain as day. I don't recall the exact page number, but I can provide it to you all if needed. This item proposes that we're going to give the responsibility to the local school districts, and that's okay. But you heard a lot of frustration yesterday, and you're hearing a lot of frustration from across the state of Louisiana about the lack of support and a scant implementation plan for local school districts. And as I read this item in haste, because it's just being presented to the public for consideration, it clearly appears that here again, we're just telling local school districts, you go ahead and do it. Do what you need to do. There's an expectation that this agency provides support to local school districts, and that this board ensure this agency provides support to local school districts. We would respectfully request that you defer this item and follow the proper procedures for presenting this type of material, aligned to your own rules that have been promulgated,
If I may, I'm
and
gonna
give the
interrupt you real
public
quick
some
on that.
time to
Just
digest this item.
Just to address your concern, this item is completely germane to the agenda item that was yesterday. Couldn't be more germane. We had five or 6 hours of debate where these very topics were discussed ad nauseum. And it is a policy-making procedure here now to react to those things as long as it remains germane to the main topic. So with all due respect, I disagree with a couple comments you've made. One is that this is not procedurally correct. It's absolutely procedurally correct, and it's the responsible thing to do. And number two, I will take exception to your characterization of the implementation as scant. Now, to argue that it could be improved is a legitimate argument. To argue that there's work to still be done is a legitimate argument. To argue that it's a big state and therefore there are going to be pockets where it's stronger than others is a legitimate argument. But to describe it as scant is not accurate. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Romer. And as you observed yesterday, I didn't come to the table during the debate on Common Core and was hoping to come to the table today to sincerely compliment the board for a number of things that transpired yesterday. However, to try to move this item a couple of minutes before today's board meeting that affects local school districts in a number of ways raises serious concern. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I'll wait till you're finished,
Thank
but
you.
I want him to be able to answer
okay.
me.
All right. I don't want to, obviously, Mr. Richard and I have some difference of opinion on some of the things he said, but I don't want to quarrel with anything he said particularly. I do just want to say that we may differ on somewhat on the interpretation of these regulations. What I read these regulations to say is that they shall have the autonomy and the flexibility to select instructional materials, that they shall not be required to do anything that the state would or the federal government would purport to make them to do, which I believe is different from saying that the department shall not provide support. And I want to just make sure, Scott, that the board does not believe those two things are equivalent to one another, because I don't think they are. And I just wanted to state that for the record.
Just for the sake of clarity, if you look at item B, LEAs shall not be required to adopt or utilize any instructional materials not of their own choosing, including any that may be recommended, endorsed, or supported by any federal or state program or agency. Districts will have to comply with PARCC assessments in this state. PARCC assessments are aligned to Common Core state standards. These are national tests to judge how students fare across the nation. And to put this into policy without any clarity or further explanation really is contradictory to what the USDOE flex waiver that was approved says in its content. And that's where the rub is. That's where there needs to be more discussion, hopefully, and more stakeholder input. And again, applaud your efforts to give local districts more flexibility, but there are some issues in these proposed policies that we would hope we would have more discussion on. And that's really the intent of my comments this morning, to present this to the board for adoption.
I will remind, I appreciate those comments, Mr. Richard. I will remind you that this is a temporary status, and that if it were to go to permanent NOI, there is a much longer procedure that will be followed. But given the comments and the concerns of yesterday, I think this just really reiterates the positions that we've had, that locals, and I shouldn't be discussing this as president, but I wanted to respond just a bit, that in fact we're not mandating certain texts. That doesn't mean we won't recommend certain texts from the state. We may very well do that, and it doesn't mean we're not going to give best practices. We're going to do that, but this still allows the locals to have the autonomy to choose those parts that they feel are best. So I appreciate your comments. And then Ms. Bofi, and then Ms. Beebe, and then I'll try to see if we can move on this item.
Okay, so not to complicate this more, but this is so much fun. I just want to put it out there that I like this autonomy for the local districts. The only way it could be better for me is if it was autonomy for teachers. And so I don't know that we're there yet as a state. I look forward to the day that we get there. So I just want to start off by saying that. The next thing I want to do is highlight the fact that in the public meetings that I've participated in, both with parents and with political groups who are interested in this issue, this policy is one that I think is an immediate address of the concerns they have relative to data. So I appreciate the work here. Also, relative to the kind of content that children may be exposed to because of the standards. So we're covering these high interest issues. So the data one, the content one, and then also the opportunity to exceed the standards. And so that's come up not in a whole lot, but it has been there. And I never wanted anyone to believe that we would want to hold kids back. So I appreciate that. And I think that the policy piece is really important. So I appreciate people working really hard, listening carefully, and coming with some solutions around the policies. But based on the conversations that I heard yesterday, that there's another piece of work, and we are a policy board, so maybe it's not the nature of our work, so to speak, but we may be able to make it happen or support it to happen. And I know that when I ask Superintendent White to do these kinds of things, that he acts on them, and I don't have to do it as an official motion. So this is what I need, Superintendent White. I need you to figure out what kind of partnerships can help us with the areas that we have trouble. So there's a couple of ones in particular. One that I keep hearing over and over, and troubles me the most, is our struggles to support students with challenges. So I have this really personal relation in the fact that my kid was born with an incredible life challenge. And he's my kid, and I've had to figure out how to help him through it. But I really hate seeing parents who are struggling to support their kids in these challenges, because I think the best thing we can do for our kids is give them challenges and give them the supports to help them overcome it. So I'm confident that we can find partnerships within our state of people who can help us do that. And once we do that, it's way better than the standards ever was. Because what we'll do is we'll create for our kids the kind of confidence they need to be successful in life. So you've worked with lots of organizations since you've been here. They like to come to the table. So I want you to go to them, and I want you to ask them what they can do to help our teachers. You've created this incredible network of teacher leaders that you can make information accessible to them, to where when a parent is having trouble supporting a kid with a challenge, that we can give them resources.
And it's not something that everybody just knows. Sometimes they have to figure it out on their own. But we have people across the state who are dealing with it right now, so we need to figure out how to get them the resources. So that's one. The other one is the leadership piece. Now, you know, we can point fingers, and that's counterproductive, or we can say we have exemplars, and we can be proud of the fact that we have exemplars. And in the case where districts are crying for help, then we can use those exemplars to help the districts. So a resolution about the Common Core is a cry for us to get help. So if we have that situation, and where we have that situation, we need to get the help to districts. And we have people in the state who are incredibly successful. I was inspired by the testimony last night. You know, you think it would be exhausting, but I was inspired because while there are people who are dealing with challenges, they're the same amount or more who are overcoming them. And we have to make those connections. I don't think that's in policy. I think that's about empowering the people. And empowerment is giving people room, which we do a really good job of giving people room. We need to get better at giving people the skill to do the work that we're asking them to do.
Thank you, Ms. Lofi. I was about to say I was going to recognize Dr. Beebe and then hope that Ms. Bradford could close and we move on.
Great.
Is that Mr. Garvey? I'm going to recognize Dr. Beebe first. I told her I would. Dr. Beebe?
Okay, and I certainly applaud the intent, but I think this could have unintended consequences, and based on my experience Sunday at a town hall meeting where parents had in their hands textbooks that were recently purchased, and I could imagine as a school system superintendent of a school district, and this was there was a textbook committee. They reviewed the available textbooks that were aligned to Common Core, and so they made the purchase. But now the parents have great concern with the language and the concepts in those textbooks. So once again, if we're giving the parents the autonomy to review them and they say, oh, this is unsatisfactory to me, then what predicament does that pose for the school system? So there will be consequences as I see this. And I have to agree with Mr. Reshord that, again, with APA, I can understand that it may be germane to the agenda item, but the public needs to review as well, because just as I pointed out something, see, you may not have had the experience that I had just recently, so you would not have thought of it. But I see this being a major problem for school systems, for superintendents, particularly if a parent finds a book that he or she, or parents, they may view it as one that is inappropriate. So again, we're giving autonomy to districts, and we're also giving problems to districts. And I don't know that our districts want that responsibility per se.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Mr. Garvey, and then I'd like to have Ms. Bradford close on the item, if we can.
Yes, and I'll be quick because I guess I'm mostly now going to thank Ms. Bofi for covering an issue that I was intending to cover. Although she did it with much more passion than I could muster this morning. We heard last night several teachers talking about how the Common Core is allowing them to help their challenged students, their special ed students, more than they think their old set of standards allowed them to do. And several of them offered to help the department get whatever it is that their secret is, get that information to other districts and other teachers. So I would like to reiterate what Ms. Bofi said and ask the department to really focus in on that issue, which seems to be a particular problem as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Ms. Bradford.
You know, we're often criticized as a board that we don't move speedily enough to help our constituencies.
That's not the criticism. I'm sorry, Ms. Bradford. I don't think that's the criticism.
Ms.
We
Booth,
said
maybe
that
if you let me
we moved too hastily, but I apologize.
May I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
I
you.
apologize.
And so, in an attempt to say to the people who were so faithful to stay, so faithful to share their concerns, we have attempted to do something temporary to say we heard you. We believe that by trying to address these in a temporary manner, to give them the opportunity to feel more confidence, to build more trust, that we're just giving them validation for their concerns. This is not the end of where we have to go. Implementation is still things that we will work on. Getting the help to the district, still things that we're working on. We have made valiant efforts, but we'll continue to see how we can help and expand that. But right now, today, this is something that we can do that will help the people who were here last night and shared their hearts know that we heard you. This is also a way that we can confirm and empower the LEAs with the powers that they've already had, with the responsibility that has always been theirs in this process, but to help them feel empowered to act in situations where they feel it is appropriate. So I encourage you to pass these motions so that we can begin the process of correcting the things that need to be corrected, tweaked, adjusted as we move in this transition in the Common Core.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. We have a proper motion, and we do have the second. Is there any objection to the motion?
Okay, can we do a roll call vote?
Sure, we may. Roll call vote, please.
I apologize, it was a late night. Okay, so the motion before the board is made by Ms. Bradford, seconded by Dr. Moranti, exactly as it appears on the handout that was given to you. Okay, Dr. Beebe.
I object with a request for clarification of promulgation of policy.
She can only vote yes or no.
You vote no, but I'll follow up with you on your item, Ms. Beebe.
Okay, Dr. Beebe votes no. Ms. Bofi?
Yes.
Ms. Bofi votes yes. Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford votes yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey votes yes. Mr. Guillot?
Yes.
Mr. Guillot votes yes. Ms. Hill?
I'm going to abstain, and the reason for my abstention is to make sure that we're following proper procedure and that legally we're following the guidelines.
Ms. Hill abstains. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Dr. Moranti?
Yes.
Dr. Moranti votes yes. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Orange-Jones votes yes. Mr. Romer, do you care to vote?
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Romer votes yes. The motion passes.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Lee.
We had excellent discussion yesterday, and plenty of it, and very passionate people on both sides. And we saw two examples of school systems that are addressing implementation very well. And that was St. Bernard, testimony from the lady there in the central office with its implementation. The other was Lincoln Parish. I would encourage the superintendent to work with parish superintendents to ensure that there is more coordinated in-service. These two examples show us it can be done statewide, and it can be done in a positive way. Maybe using the network teams that are out there, but some way to relate to, coordinate with local school systems, even to the point of reviewing instructional materials. It seems that some of the school systems hastily approved and are implementing some materials that might not be appropriate. So there just needs to be more coordination, more assistance, and I think local school systems would be receptive to that type of help. I do want to make a motion, and while this is not directly to Common Core, I think the discussion yesterday was healthy in giving attention and giving us direction that we can move forward. But I move that the department bring policy recommendations relative to transitions in elementary and middle school assessment, promotion, educator evaluation, and school accountability in the December meeting.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second.
We need to also recognize that all of this has been stated repeatedly. It's a movement. It's not final. It's a work in progress. And there just needs to be more confidence in it. And I think with time, with policy, with attention, we're going to see it come together better.
So really your motion is direct the department to come back to us with issues that you outlined.
With policy recommendations in December.
Any
But
comment?
now this motion addresses transition in elementary and middle school assessments, promotion, educator evaluation. Now this is not Common Core directly, but it's all of evaluation, and school accountability.
Okay. Any comment? Or yes, Ms. Beebe.
Okay.
Dr. Beebe, I'm sorry.
Mr. Lee, and I just wanted for the record, I asked that we halt accountability. What I'm speaking to is I don't take issue with assessments being given. I just feel that the assessment results, we do know the prediction, and as I said, I go back to my conversation with the gentleman in Washington, D.C., who said that with PARC, the rigor, that student achievement will decline. With that in mind, why set up students for failure and teachers for failure? Don't make it punitive. Allow, and perhaps I need to be speaking to Superintendent White. The fact is we can track the results. We can do progress monitoring, and we still, in essence, see accountability at work. But the punitive needs to be removed until we transition to a stage where we're on a level playing field. And I will end my comments there.
Thank you. Ms. Bophy, did you want to be recognized on this item?
I sure did. Go to Ms. Bradford first. I think she had something to say.
I just was going to add that not only our district...
Ms. Bradford, you proceed.
Not only our district superintendents are great wealths of knowledge in this area, some of the very successful principals, Mike Milstead at Ruston High in Lincoln, for instance, have done magnificent jobs. And so I think not only our superintendents, but our principals of some outstanding schools could give help.
Thank you. Ms. Superintendent?
I just want to say that I very much appreciate the guidance from the board, and on all of these issues, we'll heed it and agree that we should build on the excellent examples from some of our state's finest educators. So thank you very much for the guidance.
Ms. Bophy?
And I would just add that we're not going to put it all on your shoulders, but as we engage with people, we'll be sure to send you examples of success in the field. So,
Ms. Hill.
I need clarity in reference to Mr. Lee's motion. So you're asking that LDOE re-examine the accountability in reference to elementary and middle school, the assessment, and to bring back to the board their recommendations or their feedback?
For policy recommendations at our December meeting.
For transition between assessments and how that impacts other
Okay, I have a
issues.
question. Why not high school? Why just elementary and middle?
That, I think those definitions are going to take a little more time, and then they'll be coming, but they just won't be ready by December. Is that?
That's correct.
By the way, and I want to, if I may make a comment, you listed 2 parishes, Mr. Lee, which I appreciate. I know there are other parishes. I don't want us to pretend only 2. I see Patrice Peugeot in the crowd, who I know Ascension's been ahead on their implementation efforts and training their teachers. So she's in my district, so I got to give her full credit. She may not want the credit, so you can blame me later if you want. Anyway, but we do have a motion, and we do have a second. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, so moved. Next item. Next item is item
5.2, Administration and Finance Committee, Mr. Gio.
On behalf of the administration.
And Mr. Gio, I hate to interject. We do have 2 cards related to 8G. Do you have those pulls?
I have it pulled.
Okay,
to read.
thank you.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
On behalf of Administration and Finance Committee, I move to approve motions 1 through 40, 42 to 46, pulling 41 as a read item.
Second.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recuse myself from item 42.
Okay, so there's a motion and there's a second, and please note that Ms. Orange Jones is recusing herself on item 42.
Need a
Well, what is
second.
item 42?
No idea.
Mr. Romer, you need a second.
Do you have a second by Dr. Moranti? Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and read 41?
Yes.
Okay. On a motion of Mr. Romer, seconded by Mr. Lee, the Administration and Finance Committee recommends that the Board approve A, the 8G total allocation for FY 2014-15 of $24 million. B, the allocation of $747,000 for the management and oversight of the 8G program for FY 2014-15. C, the allocation of $150,000 for review, evaluation, and assessment of proposals. D, the allocation of at least $10.2 million for the block program. E, inclusion of the statewide competitive, local competitive, and uncategorized special projects programs with allocations to be determined. Further, the committee recommends that the board authorize BESE staff to develop the guidelines and procedures for implementation of the approved program and budget and refer further consideration of allocation amounts to the December 2013 meeting of the Administration and Finance Committee.
Thank you. Before we proceed on this item, we need to approve the other items as the motion called for. There's a motion and a second for those other items. Is there any objection noting the recusal of Ms. Orange Jones? Hearing none, so moved. I will go straight to comment cards on item 41. That's really why we pulled it, and see if Superintendent Peugeot and Scott Richard would both like to come forward as on 2 cards on this item.
Well, why didn't we hear from them before we voted? Oh, so they speak.
Thank you. I just want to thank the board for your response to Superintendent's outcry on this issue of the preservation of the block grant and the need that we have for funding our pre-K programs with it. While I appreciate the board's belief in where it wants to head on this issue, I just, we've always had a block grant part of the 8G fund. It's always been a part of that program, and we have typically used it in this way. And I just want to commend you for kind of reversing course on it and listening to our concerns, and just know that moving forward, we have got to solve the pre-K funding issue. And I would urge you to keep the block grant, certainly until such time that we could indeed solve that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman Romer, and really here just to say, echo the comments of Superintendent Peugeot, and to verify that It was a long day yesterday and a long evening to verify that the block grant funding will remain static and will not be reduced. That number of 10.2 million is the same amount for this year. So districts can expect an equivalent amount for 14-15. And again, thanks for recognizing the needs of the local school districts for a stable and reliable funding source that helps to provide for pre-K. I think that's one issue we can all agree on. And I also, while I'm up here, and I won't come back up again, I promise, to sincerely applaud
Don't say
your
something
efforts.
you can't live up to, okay?
I meant it a while ago. I want to applaud your efforts for hearing the concerns of local elected officials, local school board members, local superintendents, local principals that advocate for pre-K, and the efforts to sincerely take a step back and look at where we're going with all of the implementation concerns that have been expressed over the last couple of days. And look forward to working with you all in a meaningful manner, and want you to know that school boards want to be proactive. We're not the bad guys. We want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, as we move to raise rigor in Louisiana. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. That being said, are there any other comments on item 41?
I'd like to.
Yes, Ms. Orange-Jones?
Yep, just would like to recuse myself from item 41.
Okay, on item 41, recuse yourself. So there is a motion. Is there a motion to approve item 41? We need a motion to approve item 41.
I so move.
So the motion by Mr. Gio, seconded by Mr. Garvey. Is there any objection to item 41? Hearing none, so moved.
And just for clarification, Ms. Orange-Jones, you said recuse on 41 and 42?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next item.
The next item is item 5.3, Committee of the Whole, RSD Matters Only, Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Garvey.
Yes, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole for RSD Matters Only concerning Administration and Finance Committee, I'd like to move approval of items 1 through 16.
Okay. Second, somebody?
Second.
There's a second. I'm sorry. I wasn't. So there's a motion and there's a second. Any objection or discussion?
Yes. I think, Ms. Heather, is this the proper time to address in reference to, because I know this was...
No, and later.
Okay.
So, assuming if we have to come back for some reason, we missed it, we'll come back, Ms. Hill. But is there any objection to approving this item? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.4, Committee of the Whole, RSD Matters Only, School Innovation and Turnaround Committee. Mr. Garvey.
Yes, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole regarding RSD Matters Only involving the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee, I'd like to move approval of items 1 through 4.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Any comment? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.5, Educator Effectiveness Committee. Ms. Orange-Jones.
On behalf of the Educator Effectiveness Committee, I move to approve motions 1 to 10, noting that motion 9 is a notice of intent.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Orange-Jones, seconded by Mr. Lee. I forget. You know, it's been so many years, Walter. I just, is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.6, School Innovation and Turnaround Committee. Mr. Garvey.
Yes, on behalf of the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee, I move approval of items 4 through 10. Items 1 and items 4 through 10, noting that motions 9 and 10 are notices of intent, and pulling items 2 and 3 as reads.
So there's a motion to pull items 2 and 3 as a read and approve items 1 and 4 through 10, and noting that 1 is a notice of intent. Is there any objection to that motion? Was there a second?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but for me, I only have up to 4, and it's supposed to be 10. I don't have the rest other page.
No, one more. Go one more.
No.
You don't have those minutes.
At all. No, they had mine out of order.
I'll share.
Okay. So there is a motion and there's a second. Is there an objection to that motion? I think Ms. Bradford, did you make a second on that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Any objection to that motion? Hearing none, we will go to the items that were pulled.
Okay, item number 2, on motion of Ms. Bradford, seconded by Mr. Gio, the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee recommends that the board approve the LDE recommendation to authorize Lafayette Charter Foundation to commence operation of up to 2 Type 2 charter schools in Lafayette Parish for the 2014-15 school year, and up to 1 additional Type 2 charter school in Lafayette Parish, pending LDE review and subject to all of the following conditions being met: completion of a pre-opening checklist addressing any special considerations set forth in the recommendation, and execution of the charter contract prior to the beginning of the opening of school year.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey. Was this item pulled by request of a member?
Well, I
Dr.
guess,
Beebe or Ms. Hill? I'm not certain.
Yes, I did, but Ms. Hill is the representative for that district.
Okay.
So
yes,
wanted to
I
serve her.
received an email in reference to one of the constituents in the Lafayette Parish area, Ms. Ann Burris, and she wanted me to read her email for the record.
Yes, ma'am.
There are many of options in this world, like preferring chocolate or vanilla ice cream. There doesn't need to be a reason for your opinion. It's just what you like or dislike. But on other opinions, like how to vote on a decision to send millions of taxpayer dollars to for-profit charter schools corporations, it shouldn't be a matter of like or dislike. It should be based in facts. Our school superintendent, Dr. Pat Cooper, told what I believe is a lie, or at best, misrepresented the Lafayette School Board. Yesterday, at the BESE meeting, he said he could sign any contract for less than $100,000. He's referring here, I think, to the fact that he can approve an amount under 10% with a cap of $100,000 from a contract or construction contract standpoint. But this does not apply to signing a contract, MOU, for services provided by LDOE for the charter school application and review process. Reasonable people can agree or disagree over whether the MOU was a good thing for the parish, but there are facts that determines whether he should have signed it or not. Purchasing policy. This shows that the superintendent can sign if professional service less than $15,000 or capital improvement less than $25,000. The MOU is for $7,000. One can argue that $7,000 is below the $15,000 cap. However, the MOU was signed in February before applications were reviewed. How would anyone know if we would get 2 applicants or 10? If 10, then the contract would have been a total of $70,000. Next, superintendent contract. Even if one still believes in the face of the purchasing policy evident that the superintendent can sign the MOU without board approval, his employment contract has a statement which states, shall from time to time suggest regulations, rules, and procedures deemed necessary for the willing order of the school district. This is from the list of duties. If it says suggest. Suggest to whom? The board, of course. By suggesting a procedure such as assigning the charter school application review process to LDOE through an MOU, the superintendent should have got approval from the board. This is a complicated issue, and it may require a lawyer to figure it out. It leads to the question of, if the MOU was not effective, then was the entire application and review process for the Lafayette Parish? A lawyer would need to answer that very important question. Finally, I want you to know the background so you can make your own decision about whether or not the MOU should have been signed only by Dr. Cooper. The existence of the MOU was not disclosed to the LPB board or to the members, which was brought up in the meeting of September. Sincerely, Ann Burris.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Any other comments on that particular item?
Do we have a motion on the floor?
We do need a motion to approve.
I think the concern of the constituent is that there were the Superintendent Cooper job description in reference to what he can approve and cannot approve in regards to contracts. But in return, he approved the MOU without the board approval. So, however, I'm quite sure legally, I don't know because I'm not an attorney, but therefore I think the concern from the constituent point of view, was it legally for him to move forward with the MOU with LDOE without the board approval?
I think it's in our purview to approve a Type 5 or Type 2 charter if we want. Mr. Lee?
That question is an internal question within the Lafayette school system and not for us to be addressing.
Okay, I'd like to offer a motion.
Yes, Ms. Beebe.
I'd like to move that we reject the Type 5 charter applications.
So move to deny the application by Dr. Beebe. Is there a second?
And I'll second it.
And there's a second by Ms. Hill. I'm assuming there's objection to that motion. There's a roll call vote, please. Well, and then if I may, I need to offer the opportunity to make comment on the motion. Yes, Ms. Bofi.
I thought I heard Ms. Beebe just now say Type 5, and I thought we were talking about...
It's Type 2.
I'm sorry. We had the conversations about Type.
Okay. I just want to make sure I
a lack of sleep deprivation.
Type 2, and I said Type 5.
Type 2.
Type 2. It's a Type 2.
I'm sorry.
So there is a motion. There's a second. Any further discussion from board members? We'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to deny the Lafayette Charter Foundation Type 2 charter application as it's written.
But, yes, are we doing them separately?
Yeah, we're doing this separately.
Okay, and that motion is by Ms. Beebe and seconded by Ms. Hill. Dr. Beebe? I'm
Yes.
sorry, Dr. Beebe. Dr. Beebe votes yes. Ms. Bofi?
No.
Ms. Bofi votes no. Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Bradford votes no. Mr. Garvey?
Yeah. No. No.
Mr. Garvey votes no. Mr. Gio?
Sleep deprivation.
No.
Mr. Gio votes no. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Hill votes yes. Mr. Lee?
No.
Mr. Lee votes no. Dr. Moranti?
No.
Dr. Moranti votes no. Ms. Orange Jones? No. Ms. Orange Jones votes no. Mr. Roma, do you care to vote?
I'll vote no.
Mr. Roma votes no. The motion failed.
So we need a motion to approve that item.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Garvey, seconded by Mr. Gio. I assume there's an objection to that motion. Ms. Beebe and Ms. Hill. Dr. Beebe, I'm sorry, and Ms. Hill. Any other objection? Hearing none, that item's approved. I believe we have another item pulled.
Yes, item 3, on motion of Ms. Bradford, seconded by Mr. Gio. The School Innovation and Turnaround Committee recommends that the board approve the LDE recommendation to authorize Louisiana Achievement Charter Academies to commence operation of a Type 2 charter school in Lafayette Parish for the 2014-2015 school year, and one additional Type 2 charter school in Lafayette Parish in subsequent years, pending LDE review and subject to all of the following conditions being met: completion of a pre-opening checklist, addressing any special considerations set forth in the recommendation, and execution of the charter contract prior to the beginning of the opening of the school year.
So you need a motion? We need a
Yes.
motion?
We need to find out who pulled it.
Yes.
Yeah, I move to reject the application. Deny.
There's a motion to deny.
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Hill.
I'd like to offer a substitute motion
There's a substitute motion.
that we approve the item as read.
I'll second that.
There's a second by Mr. Gio. So there's a substitute motion on the floor by Mr. Garvey that's been seconded by Mr. Gio.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lee.
Just a clarification question. I thought a Type 2 charter required rejection by the local school system for that particular school. Is that?
It does in the case of Lafayette and East Baton Rouge parishes per yesterday. However, there are some school districts that are rated low enough that they don't require local approval according to law.
Oh, okay. I just thought they all required. I thought
Me too.
type 2 automatically required.
It was changed in the 2012 session.
Nothing, we're approving what was done yesterday. Any further comments? So there's a motion to approve, substitute motion to approve item 3 as read. There's a second. Is there objection to that motion?
I object.
Ms. Beebe and Ms. Hill object. Any further objection? Hearing none, motion approved.
Mr. Rome, I just have a question, maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification. So there, which I'll pull the law, I'm going to read that, but so there are districts that don't have to go through the approval process with the local school district, and they can still apply for a type 2 charter?
Yeah, CD and F.
Clarify that further.
Okay, CD and F school.
Correct.
Okay, so if I'm in a district and it's a CD and F school, I don't. and
District.
that- Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And if that district does not require me to come to submit an application, I can come directly to this.
Correct.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay.
Next item.
Excuse me. The next item is item 6, Board Advisory Council reports. The motion would be to receive the minutes and approve the tentative agendas for items 6.1 through 6.3.
You want to be personal?
Yes, before we move on to those items I'd mentioned earlier, I have an issue I wanted to raise, and I was thinking about asking Ms. Bothy to handle this for me because of her passion for these types of issues. But last week was Anti-Bullying Week, and I think it's an important issue for us to recognize. Bullying causes a great disruption in our schools, and it's typically the weakest and the most challenged of our students that get hit the hardest with this. I think most people saw in the newspaper just earlier this week that a lady in Florida, or a young girl in Florida, died after committing suicide as a result, at least partially, if not wholly, of bullying. And that is going to ruin 3 lives. The life of the girl that died, and the 2 other girls that were involved in the bullying. And I think we need to raise the consciousness of this issue in Louisiana in our schools. I experienced just earlier this week an example of adults turning a blind eye to this issue. And I think that if we, BESE, emphasize this issue and raise the awareness, we can help correct problems like that. So I wanted to mention it, bring it to our attention, and ask that maybe next year we recognize Anti-Bullying Week ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garvin. I want to let members know Mr. Garvin asked for a point of personal privilege earlier, and I had failed to grant it, so I apologize for that. And I do appreciate you bringing this issue to a forefront. It's a serious issue. You know, what once was considered, I think, playground hijinks, we realize, you know, there is no such thing as playground hijinks. It needs to be taken seriously, and I think that would be a good idea for this board next year at the appropriate time to take up that call. So I appreciate your comments. Anybody else care to comment quickly?
I'm just going to echo that, having been a high school principal, well, pre-K through 12 principal. It takes many forms. I think each of us can probably remember a time in our lives when something happened to us and we felt bullied or taken advantage of. It's something that never goes away, even if it was minor. And so I do think that attention to it is very important, and I hope that we will take advantage of recognizing it next week. Thank you.
Ms. Hill.
Next year.
I mean, for me, it's a very passionate issue because I am a social worker. But however, I think that we need to revisit the policy at hand, because even though the legislators have mandated that schools conduct trainings within their school districts or within their schools, in one of the board meetings that I didn't vote for because I know it's very critical and that kids are really dealing with bullying, and a lot of the kids don't understand the consequences, but not only the consequences, when are you bullying? So, and those kids need help. Who are the bullies? So I think that we need to look at policy, because in the last policy, it was required that schools conduct 4 hours of training with educators, but we cut that down. to, I believe, 2 or maybe 1.5 hours. So I think that we need to revisit that policy and to make sure that we have safeguards for not only those kids that are victims, but for the bullies as well. So there'll be something I'll be probably bringing to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we
Mr.
move
Garvey.
on, I'd also like to mention that Helping Families of Jefferson has promised me access to 11 of these beautiful shirts. So if anybody on this board would like one of these, I can get them for you. Just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey, and I thank you for bringing the issue up. We're now go back to item 6.1. We need a motion to approve the minutes. The motion by Ms.
Second.
Bradford, seconded by Ms. Bofi. Any comments or questions? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 7.1, receive the resolutions from the Grant Parish School Board and the St. Mary Parish School Board requesting amendment of the accountability bonus point calculation for non-proficient super subgroup.
Oh, we're not doing item 6.2?
We did them in Globo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move that we receive the reports and ask the superintendent to give us a report back at the next meeting regarding these, because they're making recommendations.
Sure. So there's a motion to receive the reports and ask the superintendent to follow up with us regarding those issues. Second by Ms. Bradford. Any discussion on those items? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Does that conclude our business? I want to thank everybody. We had a very busy day yesterday. I want to thank board members for your input. I thought it was a very good discussion, and thank members of the audience and staff who worked with us. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you.